Are we being visited by extraterrestrials from other planets?
How should Christians respond to reports of aliens, abductions, and UFOs?
Get answers today on Creation Magazine Live.
Welcome to Creation Magazine Live. I'm Calvin Smith.
And I'm Richard Fangrad. Creation Magazine Live gives Christians the kind of information that you'll find in Creation Magazine.
Now today we're going to be covering a topic that's sure to get some of our Christian viewers, if no one else, kind of shaking their heads a little bit.
That's right. We're going to talk about the whole subject of aliens, of extraterrestrial life, of UFOs, and everything alien today on Creation Magazine Live.
Now, I guess Creation Ministries is known for talking about, edgier subjects. We talk about creation, evolution, dinosaurs, and all that kind of stuff. But I guess some people are going to find this the outer limits, today.
That's right, the outer limits for sure. There are polls that show that a huge number of people, millions of people, even Christians, believe in UFOs. So when we're confronted with this kind of information, UFOs, perhaps a relative of yours, or you yourself may have experienced seeing a UFO, or perhaps an abduction, something like that. These experiences are real, and we'll talk about that. What is the biblical response? How do we respond biblically? How do we look in the scriptures and determine what these things really are?
Well, to help us navigate through this edition of Creation Magazine Live, we've got none other than aliens expert, author Gary Bates, with us live in the studio. And so we're going to be talking to him about these issues. Now, Gary has written pretty well the definitive book on this subject from a Christian standpoint, anyway.
That's what we believe.
That's what we believe. And his book's been on the Amazon Top 50. It's been very well received. He speaks all over the world on this subject, and of course he's an experienced creation evolution speaker as well.
And constantly gets requests for interviews on television, and both a lot of secular radio interviews as well.
Right. So we're going to look into this phenomenon. We're going to have Gary Bates live with us. You don't want to miss us, so stay tuned.
Biological life's enormous complexity is a serious objection to atheistic evolutionary theory. Many evolutionists recognize the serious scientific problems associated with the origin of the first cell non-living chemicals. In an effort to avoid the obvious that an all-knowing God created life, some people think that perhaps aliens from other planets were somehow involved in seeding our planet with the building blocks for life millions of years ago. But in this scenario, the problem for the evolutionary story of life still remains. It has just been moved to another planet. The truth is, there is no intelligent life on other planets. God created life fully functioning right at the very start. Alien Intrusion has a lot more information on aliens and the creation-evolution issue.
Creation Ministries international staff, many from a wide variety of scientific disciplines, have produced thousands of articles now available in a massive online database. www.creationontheweb.org has grown to become the world's most powerful internet resource on the creation-evolution issue. There are more than 5,000 articles already online, and new articles are added daily. Some of the topics covered include the feasibility of Noah's Ark and the evidence for a global flood, the age of the earth from both the Bible and science, scientific arguments against the Big Bang and models that explain observations in astronomy within a young Earth time frame, recent discoveries that support dinosaurs fitting with biblical history, and many, many more topics. These thousands of articles are available for free 24 hours a day to anyone on Earth with an internet connection. One of the main reasons that CMI built this website is to strengthen the faith of Christians. Genesis is one of the most attacked areas of the Bible. creationontheweb.org provides logical, scientifically accurate counterattacks in this area. As 2 Corinthians 10 verse 5 says, "We destroy arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God." Got questions? Get answers at creationontheweb.org.
Was there rain before the flood? Genesis 2 says only that there was no rain when Adam was created on day 6. It doesn't rule out rain during the entire time before the flood. What about the covenant of the rainbow God made with Noah after the flood? Doesn't that prove there weren't rainbows before the flood? God frequently gave existing things new meanings. For example, bread and wine already existed, but were given specific significance at the Lord's Supper. There's a lot more information in the Arguments Creationists Shouldn't Use section at creationontheweb.org.
Well, welcome back. Many Christians today would be hard-pressed to give answers to questions about aliens, government cover-ups, crop circles, UFOs, but not Mr. Gary Bates. Gary, welcome to Creation Magazine Live.
Thanks, Cal.
Yes, welcome. So as a biblical creationist, you're of course with our ministry, you're one of the speakers with our ministry, head of ministry over in Australia. Why did you write this book, Alien Intrusion, UFOs, and the Evolution Connection?
Well, as you're aware, our ministry, and you've already alluded to it, predominantly gives answers to the difficult questions. And increasingly, one of the most common questions we're being asked, particularly by young people, is what about UFOs and aliens? And our culture seems to be infatuated with this idea about extraterrestrial life. Could spaceships from another planet? And of course, that's a common theme in many TV programs and movies that we see today.
So, how many people in the general public actually believe in aliens or UFOs and things like that, Gary?
Yeah, Cal, that's pretty well documented. Polls around the world, and in fact, on our website last year, I wrote an article about a Reader's Digest poll that showed that 8 out of 10 people in most Western countries believe that there is life on other planets. And the majority of those believe that aliens have visited or are presently visiting the Earth.
80%?
80% of Western peoples, yeah.
So is there really something going on, though? I guess that's the question.
There's no question. I think when we say the word UFO, though, what most people think of is a flying saucer with people from another planet.
Aliens, yeah.
But a UFO, the definition is quite simply an unidentified flying object. And the statistics show that 90% of all UFO sightings can actually be explained as man-made, naturalistic objects, something like that. In fact, the most common mistake in UFO, which would surprise some people, is the planet Venus. But what causes us to make us think that there is something more mysterious is those cultural ideas that we have, as I said, that are portrayed in movies, TV programs, etc.
Right. With all the movies and the alien themes around current movies, is there any other older historical data of people who've seen UFOs before the current popular culture?
Sure. Well, let me just say that although I've said the majority can be explained as naturalistic, man-made phenomena or something like that, there is a small percentage that defy naturalistic explanations, and that's really the area that I looked into and a lot of serious researchers look into. To answer your question, Richard, that you can look back in the historical records. For example, the ancient Romans and Greeks said they saw flying shields with people on board. In fact, in 1896 and 1898, there was a wave of UFO sightings called the airship wave, where they seemed to manifest themselves as a forerunner of that airship technology that was just about to come.
Well, so that's interesting. So those people are they're taking kind of the popular culture of their day and then translating it into these sightings, the things that they're seeing.
Or alternatively, the UFOs themselves are manifesting themselves into the cultural understanding of the day, which is what I actually think is occurring.
Right.
Now, I know from reading your book and just knowing who you are, you're very much into sci-fi, and so was I. Growing up as an atheist, as an evolutionist, I really love science fiction, Star Trek and Star Wars and all that kind of stuff. But I can remember reading some books about UFOs when I was growing up, but I was interested in, I wanted some proof. I wanted some facts for all this kind of stuff, and I guess one of the biggest ones I came across were crop circles. I mean, there was real proof. They'd have photos and stuff like that. They weren't there in the nighttime. They were there in the morning. What's the deal with crop circles?
Yeah, well, it's a serious field of endeavour. There are people, scientists called seriologists, who actually go out and study crop circles for a living and make good money out of it, I might point out. But yeah, are they really extraterrestrial calling cards? Well, quite simply, it's a subject that's well covered in my book, but crop circles can be man-made quite easily. Yeah. And you know, if I say to people today, you know, they can look at websites and you'll get instructions, for example, on how to actually make crop circles. And
you can go to a website and figure out how to make a crop circle?
They give you instructions on how to do them. And in fact,
Guess what I'm doing after the show.
A team, to prove how easy they could be made 100 very simple circles in 100 minutes. And to give you some idea, two gentlemen in the United Kingdom, they first started appearing over there in about the 1970s crop circles, and these two men in the 80s put their hands up and said they were responsible for a lot of these early crop circles. Well, they were debunked by the seriologists. So what happened is a film crew watched these two gentlemen, now in their 70s, undercover in the middle of the night with no help. They didn't tell anybody about it, just being filmed by the crew. And they made a very elaborate crop circle using nothing more than the plank and the 2 bits of rope method. And the next day, they announced it to the world as a new crop circle, and the seriologists came along and said, wow, look, it's a real extraterrestrial one.
So these people were caught on film making a crop circle, but then the UFO investigators came and said, no, this is a real alien?
That's right. They say the guys that make them with planks and 2 bits of rope are actually the hoaxsters.
Well, that's pretty interesting. What do government organizations like NASA and SETI, what are the big government organizations think about these things?
Yeah, well, predominantly this is a subject that deals with origins as well, because the only idea or the only basis for extraterrestrial life being out there is from one of two reasons: either God created it or it evolved. And because people think life evolved on Earth, they look out in this enormous universe, they think there's countless galaxies and there could be countless planets, and therefore there must be life that's evolved there as well. So NASA and SETI definitely believe that there would be extraterrestrial life, but the big question is, if it is out there, is it advanced? Could it be reaching us? They certainly don't think so, and they've been investigating it for over 40 years and basically have said there's nothing to report.
Okay, but we get a lot of people talking about government cover-up. So their official stance is that there's nothing there. There's no evidence?
Certainly no evidence of extraterrestrial visitations, although I said they do believe in extraterrestrial life, under 3 projects called Project Sign, Project Grudge, and then Project Blue Book. As I say, 40 years of investigations. There were some that were unexplained. But see, I believe what we're dealing with is really a supernatural phenomenon. And so there would be no official government stance, if you like, on such a subject. The common answer that the US government gives, for example, is they pose no threat to national security. That's it. That's your standard answer.
Okay.
Nothing poses no threat to government security. That's basically what they're saying.
Yeah, but how would a government, for example, try to explain something that they can't explain to the general population? It puts the government in a precarious position, which is why I think you get that fairly standard answer.
So what about all the government cover-ups then we hear about?
Well, Roswell is a case in point. In fact, this year is the 60th anniversary of the Roswell Crash, where it's claimed that a flying saucer crash landed on a ranch in New Mexico, and the government whisked away the bodies to a secret hangar known as Area 51, etc. It was secret government technology, but it had nothing to do with aliens and flying saucers. Quite simply, in the days before we had rockets and satellites, the government needed to listen to above-ground Soviet nuclear tests, and they had huge arrays of, if you like, balloons with sonar listening devices on them, or acoustic listening devices, I'm sorry, and one of them crashed. But of course the government denied that something was going on because they didn't want the Russians to know they were spying on them.
Right.
So.
But I can remember actually seeing a film, I think it was in the 70s, I was fairly young, and they had this alien autopsy and all that kind of...
That's a famous, the alien autopsy.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I remember watching that a few years ago, and it troubled me. But Solomon says there's nothing new under the sun, and quite simply that was a hoax, and the reason it was made was to make money. It was in fact one of the biggest hoaxes ever perpetrated on a watching public.
I remember watching that, and there was special effects people from Hollywood that said, wow, this is really real. Why would somebody go to this trouble and make it look so real?
Yeah, well, in fact, one of the proofs they had is they said that they'd sent a piece of the film to Kodak for verification of its age, and Kodak said, yes, it was 1940s film, But the interesting thing is, if you dig a bit deeper, the producers of the Roswell autopsy movie left out the fact that they didn't send any footage with prints on it. They just sent a piece of the leader tape. So the film itself was aged 1940s, but they couldn't say for sure that it was the film that was in the documentary.
So now you mentioned Roswell, and I know popular TV shows like X-Files and stuff like that, and there's even video games about Area 51 and stuff like that. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Okay, well, if I asked our viewers, who's surprised that government keeps secrets? Of course governments keep secrets. Area 51 is a secret government base. They've developed the SR-71 Blackbird spy plane, stealth technology was developed there, etc. But just because governments keep secrets doesn't necessarily mean that they're harvesting alien technology and reverse engineering it to make lasers or something like that. I mean, it's again that wishful thinking about UFOs poured into the situation, really.
But you really do have a large portion of the population that's being fed on these concepts in movies and stuff like that, and they're believing in it.
There's so many of these ideas that all link up together: conspiracy theories, crop circles, things that we see in the sky, and so on. All of these ideas fit together in a certain way.
We're going to talk more about this in just a moment, so stay with us.
Many people believe that carbon dating has proven the biblical timeline is not scientifically valid. It supposedly dates some material beyond 6,000 years. Because the theory of evolution requires millions of years to be viable, a young Earth position is in direct opposition to that theory. However, in many cases, carbon dating has not assisted evolutionists in the attempt to prove the theory of evolution. Take coal, for example. If in fact it is millions of years old, it should have no traces of carbon-14 in it. However, scientists to date have not yet found any coal completely lacking all carbon-14. While this may baffle many scientists, it makes perfect sense to creation scientists who believe that the Earth is relatively young.
Creation Ministries International staff, many from a wide variety of scientific disciplines, have produced thousands of articles now available in a massive online database. www.creationontheweb.org has grown to become the world's most powerful internet resource on the creation evolution issue. There are more than 5,000 articles already online, and new articles are added daily. Some of the topics covered include the feasibility of Noah's Ark and the evidence for a global flood, the age of the Earth from both the Bible and science, scientific arguments against the Big Bang and models that explain observations in astronomy within a young Earth time frame, recent discoveries that support dinosaurs fitting with biblical history, and many, many more topics. These thousands of articles are available for free 24 hours a day to anyone on Earth with an internet connection. One of the main reasons that CMI built this website is to strengthen the faith of Christians. Genesis is one of the most attacked areas of the Bible. CreationOnTheWeb.org provides logical, scientifically accurate counterattacks in this area. As 2 Corinthians 10 verse 5 says, "We destroy arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God." Got questions? Get answers at creationontheweb.org.
Well, we're back with internationally known author and speaker Gary Bates, and he wrote this book, Alien Intrusion, UFOs and the Evolution Connection. Now, Gary, all three of us, and of course many others, are in a ministry called Creation Ministries International. Why would a creation ministry, a ministry that focuses on Genesis and the origins debate, why write a book on aliens?
Well, you notice the subtitle is called, the book's called Alien Intrusion. The subtitle is UFOs and the Evolution Connection. And really what we do is we find out how there is a link with this whole phenomena to a question of origins. So origins is a worldview issue, and pretty much, people, when they come to form a worldview, do so as a result of where they think they came from. And so even with the question of aliens and UFOs, where did they come from? It gets back to being an origins issue. And, as we know, most people on this planet believe that evolution is a fact.
Right.
I don't agree with that, obviously, but that's what most people believe because of what they've been taught. And so they extrapolate that idea, if you like, out cosmically. and believe that there could be potentially millions of alien races who have evolved out there.
And it's such a popular idea that when your book came out a couple of years ago, recording these shows here in 2007, your book was out in early 2005,
That's right?
right? It went within the top 50 on Amazon.com, the world's largest secular bookstore. It's a tremendously popular topic, isn't it?
It is, and it's the only creation book ever to be on an Amazon top 50 bestseller, which I suppose is a bit of a benchmark, if you like, for the popular books. But again, I think that's because it shows the fascination with the subject. And here was somebody treating it, if you like, in a different way to the way most secular people deal with it. What I found is in the UFO community that, and in most of their literature, is that they ignore a lot of evidence that will dispel the idea that these aliens are coming from outer space. And so I've approached it, if you like, trying to just objectively look at the evidence. I make no apologies that I have a Christian worldview, but I do believe that in the book I just deal with the evidence as it stands. What are we actually seeing? You know, what is a UFO? Where do they come from? And we show, I believe, that they're not coming from outer space, and that aliens did not evolve on other planets.
I guess we can explore that a little bit further. You mentioned in the last, just a few moments ago, that there's a small percentage of these sightings, these experiences that people have, that can't be explained. The great majority, you said, can be explained through natural phenomenon and so on, man-made technology and that kind of thing. What about that small percentage that can't be explained? What is really happening there?
Yeah, well, I have to say that you know, I wrote the book as a bit of a link, if you like, to try to draw people to the gospel and creation evolution issues.
Sure.
But I actually found it very confronting myself, because I started to realise that there really was something going on, and there were things happening that do defy naturalistic explanation. People are really having experiences in their bedrooms in the middle of the night, for example.
So these are not the people. This is not something in people's minds. They're actually experiencing something and seeing something in the sky. These UFOs.
Absolutely, and I'd like people to hear that I'm not a debunker when it comes to this. Even though I'm saying the majority can be explained, but we have to look at the small percentage that can't be explained and try to figure out what's going on. And amazingly, as I did the research, just looking at each episode for itself, I came to discover, no surprise, that the Bible was the only thing that could give me an answer to what was going on. For example, UFOs themselves, I mean, sometimes they appear as shiny nuts and bolts spacecraft, but then they change shape. Some of them have been seen to fly into each other at thousands of miles per hour and become one object. They've disappeared from radar screen. American Air Force pilots have shot at them and they've disappeared from sight. Now, how can a nuts and bolts spacecraft do that? And even the leading researchers, the secular researchers around the world, even though they wanted to deal with the physical evidence, and it pained them to come to a conclusion that they were dealing with what they called a paraphysical or paranormal phenomena. Whereas with my Christian worldview glasses, I would say it's a spiritual phenomenon.
Spiritual issue, yeah.
I would say, or I don't know, this is my impression, that as I'm talking to a lot of Christians, they kind of just dismiss this. It's kind of like, you believe in aliens, you believe in UFOs, it's kind of like, you're a little wacky, you know, you just put those people on the shelf kind of thing. Yeah. But what you found is there are millions of people worldwide who seem to have similar experiences. You can't just, if your next door neighbor comes up to you and you're a Christian and says, no, I had an encounter with an alien. I mean, we need to have answers for these people, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, we have to be very careful and gentle, because presume somebody's had an experience. Mm-hmm. Now, it might not be a real alien, but it could be a real experience. And the typical Christian response, I have to say, is, oh, well, you know, it's just all demonic or something like that. And immediately you say that, what happens is you're putting up a wall. And those people will turn away and they'll go and seek somebody else who will give them the answers that they want to hear. You know, maybe it's a real alien. So don't deny the experience, but try to work through it and explain what might be happening to them.
So if these experiences, if these UFOs, these things that people are seeing, if they're real, they're really seeing them, but they're not physical, as you said, nuts and bolts crafts, and they're spiritual, there's evidence against them being nuts and bolts crafts other than just the visual phenomenon. What about interstellar travel? Travel from very far away with a physical craft? Is that even possible?
Yeah, we've all seen Star Trek now and Star Wars, so is it actually possible for advanced civilizations to make crafts and get here, or what?
Well, it'd be nice. I mean, I confess to being a closet Trekkie, but the concepts of traveling at warp speed and hyperspace. I mean, we're talking about magnitudes faster than the speed of light. The speed of light is 300,000 kilometers, every second. And Einstein has really showed that that is a physical impossibility within our time-space universe.
Right.
If you hit a grain of dust traveling at even 50% of the speed of light, it'd be equivalent to 10 tons of TNT going off inside the spaceship.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, but wait a second. Don't you just hit shields up and then it's all good?
yeah, and you know, when you want to do a U-turn at warp factor 9, you have inertial dampers to stop you getting
Accelerate,
splattered
yeah,
on the
right,
walls
yeah.
or something. No, it's in the realms of science fiction. That's what people need to realise. And that's why organisations like NASA and SETI do not subscribe to the idea that aliens could be visiting the Earth in advanced technology. You have to actually defy the known laws of physics. You can't do that.
Right, and those are known laws of physics.
That's right.
It's not like there's some science out there that we're just not sure about. We know how things work and so on.
Well, it's illogical to resort to an unknown to explain something.
Right,
So
right.
it doesn't make sense.
What do you say to people, though, that say, okay, 3,000 years ago, it was impossible for somebody to think of a light bulb. And so, now we've developed technology that we didn't have in the past, and this would be their line of thinking. So wouldn't it be possible to then, maybe, if these people, following the evolutionary mindset, we evolved on Earth, therefore, there's many planets, ancient civilizations,
Sure.
couldn't they have evolved or got technology because they're more highly
you've
evolved?
hit the nail on the head there, Cal, because we've all heard of the Big Bang, and you'll probably be talking about that in one of your episodes, but right at the centre of all this is the idea that the universe exploded out of nothing, and clouds of dust and gas coalesced to form planets and galaxies. And I've been to UFO conferences where investigators have stood up and said, hey, we know the great cosmic science experiment evolution is true because here we are. Therefore, they say in an 8 billion or 14 billion year old universe is predicated by the Big Bang, there could be alien races that could be 1 billion years older than ours. And if they're 1 billion years older, they could be 1 billion years advanced in their technology.
More advanced, yeah.
But again, if evolution's not true and there was no Big Bang, that just blows a big hole in that theory.
Right. Well, during talks that I've done, we always talk about, okay, it's either creation or evolution. Those are your two explanations for being here. But I've actually had people say, well, what if the aliens did it? So what's your response when people say that?
Well, in fact, that is one of the most popular views amongst serious scientists today. They look at the complexity of the DNA molecule and they realise that there's an intelligence behind it. Intelligent design is a concept that people are talking about today. In fact, the co-discoverer of the DNA molecule, Sir Francis Crick, believed that aliens put it there. He realised he was looking at something incredibly complex. But really all you're doing is you're pushing the problem out into outer space where you can't test it. So you've got to then ask, well, if the aliens created us, who created the aliens that created us? And then who created the aliens that created them? And,
Same problem.
it's that origin of first life. That's the big issue. And all life looks and appears to be incredibly complex as if it was designed.
So then, would it be fair to say, well, let you give the answer. What's the number one reason why people believe in aliens? Why do you think, after looking into this, why do you think people believe in aliens ultimately?
Well, I don't think it is a number one. I actually think there's two, and they work together. Beliefs in evolution, combined with science fiction today. Now, I'm not against science fiction, but what we need to know is it's science fiction,
Right.
science fantasy, and science fiction has been useful. I mean, Arthur C. Clarke invented the idea of satellites to avoid the line of sight problem, if you like, for transmitting radio broadcast. But when it comes to evolution added with it, life on other planets, it is really in the realms of fantasy.
So life on other planets, I guess we need to make a distinction between intelligent life versus microbial life. For example, NASA's looking for life on Mars. Would we have a problem with that?
Well, it's interesting that people think that life on Earth
We're
came
going to have
from
to take
Mars.
this up in just 1 minute. We'll have lots of more questions for Mr. Gary Bates, and we'll get some great answers in just one moment.
Young Earth creationists are sometimes accused of believing that the whole Bible should be taken literally. What we actually encourage is that the biblical text should be taken according to the style of writing, that is, taken straightforwardly. The Bible contains poetry, parables, prophecy, apocalyptical writing, and historical narrative. Each writing style should be taken as it is written. For example, we should not twist the parables of Jesus to suggest that they refer to real people or events. Since Genesis was clearly written as historical narrative, to understand it straightforwardly means taking it as a literal historical record of what actually happened.
alien intrusion, UFOs, and the evolution connection. Little green men, flying saucers, no longer relegated to the lunatic fringe, the search for alien life has taken the world by storm. In this sensational book, UFO researcher Gary Bates exposes truths that will change readers forever. This book leads the reader inexorably to one conclusion. There is an intergalactic battle over the history of life in the universe, and for the souls of human beings. Did God create life on other planets? Otherwise, why is the universe so big? Is there life in space? Should we search for extraterrestrial intelligence? Were the sons of God and or the Nephilim of Genesis 6:4 aliens? The answer to these and many other questions may shock and surprise you. Learn what the all-encompassing theme is behind the belief in extraterrestrial life. These eye-opening insights will likely win many for Christ.
Each Creation magazine has a news section called Focus, where we look at things that are happening in the news regarding the creation evolution issue. And since this is Creation Magazine Live, we're doing the same thing live regarding our topic today, which is UFOs, aliens, abductions, and so on. And since we have Gary Bates, our special guest here, we're going to ask him some things about things that have happened regarding this topic in the news recently. Cal, you've got an article, an Arizona governor.
Yes. Let's run this one by you, Gary, and see what you think about something like this. The article, very recent, titled "Former Arizona Governor Comes Forward About UFO Sightings from 10 Years Ago," and it says this governor trotted out an aide dressed as an alien 10 years ago to spoof the frenzy surrounding mysterious lights in the Phoenix sky. Now he says he saw the lights himself and believed from the start that they were extraterrestrials. I'll just move down a bit, and he says, "I'm a pilot and I know just about every machine that flies." He was a former Air Force captain, told the Arizona Daily Star on Thursday. "It was bigger than anything that I've ever seen." He's describing what he's witnessed. "It remains a great mystery. Other people saw it, responsible people. I don't know why people would ridicule it." And he told a major news network the craft he saw March 13th, 1997 was enormous. It just felt otherworldly. In your gut, you could just tell it was otherworldly. Now here's a guy, that probably has something to lose by coming forward, because there's a lot of people that would just like dismiss him as a quack. But he's a former governor, and he's very bold.
Well, I think the relevant point is he was a former governor, so he obviously wasn't game to make comment about it at the time,
right,
because it would be ridiculed. But more and more people are actually coming out and, if you like, confessing about their UFO experiences. And I know that people out there watching today, and even Christians,
right,
will have seen UFOs. And as I said, we're not denying those experiences, but there was once upon a time you'd be regarded as a crackpot,
right,
to talk about such things, whereas today, you wouldn't be regarded in the same light. So it's, the environment is a lot easier for people to have a look at. There's no question the Arizona sightings are very famous. Thousands of people have seen them, and so they're well documented, and you just can't dismiss something that thousands of people have seen.
Well, he even says, "I don't know why anyone would ridicule it." Now, lots of people do ridicule it, but apparently he is so sure that he had this experience, and that several people have, that we should just accept it as truthful, so on and so forth.
Well, we need to understand that actually our senses can be deceived. I mean, I could, hold my book up if I was a good magician, quote magician, and make it disappear. But you have enough head knowledge to know that I actually can't make something disappear. So
right,
immediately you understand that it's a sleight of hand or something. But when you're dealing with something that is of an unknown quality, then you tend to be taken in by, if you like, the visual experience. And
right,
that's really what's happening. Our senses can be deceived. Now, we actually are seeing something. We could be seeing something that's physical,
yeah,
but where is it manifesting from? Where is it? Is it really from another planet? That's the question that really people want to know.
Now, I've read your book, and I've actually listened to it on CD a couple of times, it's a great book for anybody that's interested in this, and even not. I wasn't really interested in this topic, actually, at the time your book came out, but I saw it, and I read it, and I was really gripped by it. I thought it was really well done. But there are some famous people. You said he was a former governor, but aren't there some famous people that have hung it out there and said, "Yeah, I believe in aliens"?
Absolutely. Former US President Jimmy Carter, during his election campaign, of all things, came forward. Didn't seem to diminish his chances because he obviously won office. Former NASA astronauts, Gordon Cooper, who died recently, as another former experiencer who's seen UFOs and has actually even petitioned the United Nations. Right now, before the UN, there is a petition. They're actually discussing a bill promoted by all people of former Canadian Minister of Defence, Paul Hellyer,
Right.
who was a real UFO believer. And they're actually considering whether to make the next decade the decade of contact with UFOs, a subject known as exopolitics.
Now that's fascinating to me because, okay, you got Jimmy Carter, it's his election year. He comes out and says, yeah, I believe in aliens, but myself as a Christian now, I mean, a lot of my family think I'm crazy just because I'm a Christian and I have a belief in God. So obviously this concept is so entrenched in our culture that it's very, you can be very respectable, so to speak, and believe in aliens, but in some places, if you believe in God, you're not well respected.
Yeah. Well, what we have to understand is some of the technology that is manifesting itself, some of the experiences or the sightings that are manifesting themselves are manifesting as if they're technology. So it gives that appearance of something more advanced or more alien, and that is the deceptive nature of it.
We've got another article here actually from our website that you wrote regarding a news article. I'll just read some of it briefly here. We previously reported the antics of Paul Hellyer, this same fellow, the former Canadian Minister of Defence in Pierre Trudeau's cabinet. That's here in Canada where we're taping these shows. And that was in Creation Magazine. You reported on that in one of the Creation magazines. And his belief in UFOs. He received a standing ovation during a speech to university students when he said this: UFOs are as real as the airplanes that fly over your head. I'm so concerned about what the consequences might be of starting an intergalactic war that I just think I had to say something. And so that word exopolitics is right in here in the next paragraph again.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about Paul Hellyer and Jimmy Carter and this former Arizona governor, why they've become so convinced is because they've seen something. They've had an experience. And we're talking about the deceptive nature. We're going to talk about abductions in a moment. But the big issue is when people have a real experience, that becomes their filter for truth. In other words, they can put on now a different set of glasses because of their experience. And they start to discern everything through their experience. And we have to be aware, and we know as Christians, experiences can be deceptive. We have one authority, which is the Bible, which is the one that we need to hold up to act as a filter for these types of things.
What's interesting about this particular article that you wrote is the title. Global warming might become an alien agenda. How do you link global warming with an alien agenda?
Yeah, well...
Don't you link everything to an alien agenda? I don't know.
Well, it's a world, just like you said, it's a filter for viewing issues. It's a filter for viewing your worldview.
Well, the first thing, he's pretty clever because he's an ex-politician, right? So they know how to market themselves and to sell themselves. And global warming is one of those hot topics at the moment. So what he's doing, he's using global warming, if you like, as a take to draw people into this whole UFO phenomenon.
So the idea is that these aliens will have a super advanced technology, and they'll be able to solve the current the perceived global warming crisis.
That's right. Well, if they've got advanced technology and they can overcome the speed of light and the interstellar dust and all the other problems that are out there, they must have overcome global warming on their planet. They've obviously got technologies that don't cause those types of things. So, if we can be friendly with them, maybe they can solve our perceived problems.
So the idea is that they'll come down and with a super advanced technology, they'll solve all our problems, and they'll be our saviors and set us on the straight and narrow.
Exactly.
I guess that's the idea when we think about some of these things. Very interesting thinking about UFOs and the news and what's going on. Just
I
the
find it
popularity.
so interesting that he received a standing ovation from so many students because
Isn't
of his
that
belief.
interesting? It's a very, very popular idea. That's why we're doing the show today.
Many have said that creationism is religion based on faith, and evolution is science based on facts. However, the word religion has been defined as a set of beliefs concerning the cause, nature, and purpose of the universe. The theory of evolution is exactly that. Evolution is a belief about what happened in the unobservable past. It is a belief about what caused the universe to come into existence. It goes even further by commenting on purpose or morality as admitted in an interview with evolutionist Richard Dawkins. The interviewer asks, There's a large group of people who simply are uncomfortable with accepting evolution because it leads to what they perceive as a moral vacuum. Dawkins responds, "All I can say is that's just tough. We have to face up to the truth." Evolution clearly fits the definition of religion.
Aliens, UFOs, and the Bible. Every day there are hundreds of UFO sightings. Are they alien spacecraft as many people believe? What do we really know about this intriguing phenomenon? This illustrated lecture is a great overview of this baffling mystery. This DVD examines the most famous events that have defined UFO culture, such as Roswell and the alien autopsies, astronaut Gordon Cooper's sightings, and the claims of famous contactees Bill Meyer and George Adamski. Discover evidence about alien abductions and other UFO phenomena that is widely ignored by the UFO community and how it relates to the Christian faith. In this fascinating video, featuring UFO authority Gary Bates, you'll finally get answers from observational science and the Bible. This DVD addresses the most important topics on this exciting subject and is a perfect conversation starter. Well, we're back with internationally known author and speaker Gary Bates, and he's our resident alien expert, and he's written this book, Alien Intrusion, UFOs and the Evolution Connection. Now, we've been talking a lot about some of the different aspects of your book, but I'm sure our Christian audience is very interested in getting down to the nitty-gritty of all these topics. So let's dig into some biblical truths here.
I mean, one of those things that a lot of people hear about and it ends up being kind of scary is alien abductions. What is happening with alien abductions? Is that something that's real? Is it a hallucination again, or what's happening with alien abductions?
Well, let's just look at what's happening. Typically, people are asleep in bed, or they're driving their car. They see a UFO, or they see something enter their room, a little being. Sometimes it walks through the walls, or it walks through the roof, or something like this. Now we know, again, a physical being, as we understand physical, can't do those sorts of things. Then they have, they recall, usually under hypnosis, being taken aboard the spacecraft and being subject to grotesque medical examinations. It's quite scary stuff. I mean, you can imagine if you really believe something like that happened to you, that's pretty much a life-changing experience. And so that's the power of this. But again, when you hear what's happening and you do get to the nitty-gritty of it, what people are being told by these so-called entities, because obviously I don't believe that they're aliens, that's where you can unpick it. And you'll find, I think, Christian apologist John Ankerberg basically said, why do aliens fly millions of light years across the universe just to come and tell us that our Bible's wrong and teach us New Age ideas, which is pretty much what it boils down to.
So that's the kind of information that's being communicated in these abductions?
Yeah, that people are often told that although they're subject to very, very harsh treatment, brutal, some of it is quite disturbing, so people need to be prepared for some of the confronting evidence in my book. But, they're told that it's for their own good, that the aliens are their saviours, they're their creators, and ultimately they're going to lead the world into a new age, some sort of nirvana or some sort of paradise. And there are even accounts in there that mirror the Bible's events, about end times, for example, but all with a UFO twist. I'll give you an example. I've been stood at UFO conferences, and I've got photos there of people that show Elijah, being raptured into a UFO, Jesus hanging on the cross surrounded by thousands of spaceships that are supposedly the heavenly host. And most Christians laugh at that. And when I mentioned at a meeting once, I remember one lady stood up and shouted out, well, what's wrong with that? Because you see, the supernatural is explained away as a quasi-technology, because if they're advanced, it might appear to us to be some sort of supernatural event, but again, it's that old trick about, well, maybe it's advanced technology you don't understand. In other words, Jesus was just an advanced extraterrestrial. That's how he could turn water into wine and raise the dead.
Okay, so those miracles that Jesus did, and the apostles perhaps, and the Old Testament, the signs of God and so on, they're being reinterpreted now through these alien abductions. And so people, you've met some of these people, and I know you've told me that they're very difficult to talk to about the truths of Scripture.
Yeah, that's because the experience they've had is so powerful. That's one of the problems. And but the way we can explain it, I believe, as I said, is using the Bible. We don't try to fit UFOs in the Bible, which is what these guys are trying to do. We can actually use the Bible to explain UFO manifestations. And we use the term alien abductions, but of course I don't believe they are alien abductions, and that's why I choose the term that they are experiences, they've had experiences. And when I talk about the beings, I use the word entities, because I believe that there are things happening to these people.
So if they aren't aliens, they're not coming from crafts from other worlds, where are they coming from?
That's it, and that's the thing that stumped most people. And even the movers and shakers of the UFO movement, serious scientists, have come to the conclusion, as I mentioned before, that they're dealing with something paraphysical. So they say that they might be coming from another dimension. Now, if you like, I believe that the Bible does talk about other dimensions. It talks about a spiritual dimension. The Apostle Paul says we have to spiritually discern things. Why do we do that? Because we've got to use the Bible to interpret, if you like, events that we can't actually understand in our own physical realm. And the Bible does talk about beings, if you like, that come from another realm, and that is angels.
Yeah.
And there, of course, there are fallen angels, those who are part of Satan's plan to deceive and lead people astray from the God of the Bible.
And people often at conferences and so on, when you and I are out speaking, and people see Gary's book on the table and they see it sitting there. I mean, you've noticed this. People look at it and they think, "What? How come you guys have a book on aliens? You're a creation ministry."
Right.
And then when we explain to them just very quickly that one of the things that you've noticed and that you say in the book is the abduction experiences stop if the name of Jesus is invoked. Then the lights go on. It's like, okay. Now I begin to see the connections between this topic and what you guys are on about.
Because one of the things you mention in the Bible, and you've already talked about, is the fact that people that believe in UFOs are pretty comfortable with the Bible. They'll read the Bible and believe in UFOs, and they'll just sort of mix it together, kind of like putting it in a blender, I guess.
Well, this is why Christians should not ignore this. You sort of mentioned, why are we dealing with this? But Christians ignore it at its peril. And, as you said, I've spoken all over the world, and invariably, just about every meeting I go to, I'll have Christians who'll come up to me and have seen a UFO, and some have even had experiences. And even they've been very uncomfortable to talk. Often I'm the first person they've ever revealed that to.
Right.
But one of the reasons they actually end up believing in life on other planets is because even they've been conditioned by the popular culture. And this is the problem today with evolution. The church should be salting the culture, but what happens is it's the other way around. The church gets influenced by these external ideas.
Yes, and we've talked about the millions of years and how pervasive that idea is. Here's another pervasive idea, aliens and so on. We're finding people in the church are beginning to reinterpret the Bible in terms of UFOs.
Well, I think one of the things about Creation Ministries is we want to give Christians answers for the questions that they're getting asked out there, especially if they're out there witnessing. And so if we don't give them an answer about aliens, the world's going to give you an answer about aliens, and it's going to have nothing to do with the Bible.
Well, in fact, I think here is a great opportunity for Christians, in fact, to take the lead. Because I would challenge people watching this, go and ask a teenager in a public high school somewhere, just go and poll a few teenagers, and you'll find that the majority of them believe that there are aliens and that they are our creators. And in fact, one of the most disturbing things, I was actually teaching at a Bible college back in Brisbane in Australia. I was talking about the subject, and a youth pastor said he polled the youth group and he asked the question, who here believes in aliens, UFOs, that kind of stuff? And he said every single person, I'm not exaggerating, this is what he told me.
This is from a Christian youth group.
From a Christian youth group, every single person in that youth group said they believed in UFOs or aliens or extraterrestrial life.
Wow. So if we can begin to make those connections, like that one that can be made in just a few minutes when people see the book on the table again, why do abduction experiences stop if the name of Jesus is invoked? There's a ministry in Florida you mentioned that, and the folks there used to believe that these phenomenon were aliens from other planets, extraterrestrial life, and they've changed their viewpoint, haven't they?
Well, they actually worked for the world's largest organisation that investigates UFOs. And they felt that they'd stumbled across something, and they went amongst their own colleagues and rang all over the world, and all their colleagues said they all found that the same experience, that abductions were halted in the name of Christ, but they dismissed it as a religious notion. They didn't feel that it fitted with the science and often their New Age ideas.
Okay, so why would abduction experiences stop if the name of Jesus is invoked? It reveals the identity of the aliens, doesn't it?
That's right, absolutely.
Ultimately.
Absolutely,
That's
and that's where it gets to. And the other thing, I sort of talked about Christians taking the lead and asking people out there, because one of the reasons I actually got into the book was to use a subject matter that I was aware that the world was very interested in as a mechanism to lead them to the gospel, to lead them to Christ. And one of the great blessings I've had in the book is we have seen people come to the Lord through the book, just by reading it, because they were basically just interested in aliens, and they got confronted with the gospel. They actually, as I mentioned earlier, that somebody described the book like an onion, that you gradually peel off the layers and you start to debunk the ideas of hyperspace travel and evolution and aliens being our creators, and then you are left with what? And you're left with the only conclusion that there is a creator, that there is a spiritual dimension to our own existence, and that this can be explained by the Bible.
Right. So through this book, you're actually building a biblical worldview using this fascinating subject of UFOs and aliens.
That's right.
That's great. So I believe you have a website that's dedicated to this as well.
Yeah, again, the website, like the book, is predominantly designed, and I say unapologetically, as a hook to try to get people using this subject matter interested into biblical things. And the website is called alienintrusion.com. One word, alienintrusion.com. There's lots of pictures. There's even games on there. You can click on a picture and get a fast fact about UFOs, etc.
Right, all these fast facts.
Yeah, and it will lead people to our website where they can get the book and DVDs and other creation material as well.
What a fascinating topic. That's been our topic today on Creation Magazine Live, answering the tough questions that Christians have about these phenomenon, not just creation evolution, but in many areas. We'll be back.
Supernovas. When a massive star explodes, it is called a supernova. This explosion is so bright that it will briefly outshine the rest of its galaxy. According to physical equations, the supernova remnants should keep expanding for hundreds of thousands of years. If our own galaxy really is billions of years old, we should be able to observe more than 5,000 supernova remnants with a diameter of 300 light years or more, yet we don't see a single one. This is exactly what we would expect if our galaxy was 6,000 to 10,000 years old.
Finding answers to questions about the origins debate. Creation or evolution? When the results are in, which one is supported by scientific observations? Find out at creationontheweb.org. Creation scientists and researchers from around the world have contributed more than 5,000 articles, many of which appeared in leading creationist publications like Creation Magazine and the Journal of Creation over more than 30 years. A new daily front page article keeps web visitors informed about the latest breaking news in the creation evolution debate. When news breaks about the latest evolutionary ape man or some major supposed evidence for evolution, check out creationontheweb.org for a Christian creationist response. Each weekend, the website features a feedback article, a response to web visitors' email feedback. Often, the anti-creationist arguments in skeptics' emails are refuted in a detailed response by a CMI staff member. So in a very practical way, believers can see that the Bible, and particularly Genesis, can be defended against skeptics' arguments. The website includes an online store where you can browse through hundreds of the world's leading creationist books, DVDs, and related materials, all available to build up the faith of the believer. Got questions? Get answers at creationontheweb.org.
Welcome to the feedback section of the show. This is where we look at some of the feedback via our website, via letters, and so on. Now you've received quite a number of letters after your book came out on aliens, just a few. Here's one of them that we thought was interesting. Fast food giant firms up alien beliefs is the title that we've given to this. Hi Gary, I thought you might find this interesting. Recently I took my children to McDonald's for a treat and they received a little music toy with their meal that plays an innocent sounding chorus of the tune called Doobie Dam Dam by a German pop group called Banneroo. He mentioned the lyrics, he wrote down the lyrics as well. When I was lying in my bedroom, there was a scary sound behind the door. It was It was a sound of space and nowhere I never heard before. Got out of bed and saw this green light. There was something going on, but then I saw an alien and he began to sing his song. And then it goes into the chorus. So here's a McDonald's treat for little children, and they're weaving in aliens into this little treat.
Well, it was for young children because it was actually in the Happy Meals. So,
Happy Meals, yeah.
So this tune was a #1 song apparently over Europe and many parts of the world. But I actually downloaded the music video on my website, and there it is. It's got the aliens taking people out of their bedrooms, the whole thing. And this was this idea in a cartoon, or not a cartoon form, an animated form, appealing to children, is desensitizing children to this concept. So, yeah, I actually think things like that, although, you might laugh and joke, but when we desensitize our children in such a way, then they're more prone to deception.
It's like evolutionists using dinosaurs to promote the idea of millions of years. Nobody's ever seen a dinosaur. Dinosaurs lived millions of years ago, and that kind of thing. That's taught to very, very small children. And so
but now you've got little kids that believe in aliens. I mean, these are 3-4-year-old kids, and so they're going to grow up with that concept. And it's pretty hard to change people's minds once they believe something. Right?
It is. Like as we know with anything, if you train a child in that way when they're young, that's what Solomon says, they will not depart from it. He was talking about biblical things, but it's also a principle in terms of training people with the wrong concepts when they're young.
Yeah.
Right.
The greatest influences, can be made when they are very, very young children.
Now, these are big companies, though. Like, this is McDonald's, and of course, like you said, well, it's just a joke, or it's just a treat, or something like that. But have you found that, you're seeing that more and more with large companies?
Well, let's have a look at what's popular. In movies, you can go onto any websites like Yahoo and look at the highest grossing movies of all time, and you'll generally find between 70 to 80% of the highest grossing movies of all time are sci-fi.
Sci-fi, yeah.
In fact, the largest, most watched TV show in the history of this planet is Star Trek: The Next Generation. More people on the planet Earth have watched Star Trek: The Next Generation than any other TV show. And Eric von Daniken, some of our older viewers will know, he wrote that book called Chariots of the Gods, one of the largest selling books of all time, not just in sci-fi. He built a museum in Switzerland called Unlocking the Mysteries of the World, dedicated to UFOs. The major sponsors were Coca-Cola, Fujitsu, Siemens, some of the largest corporations in the world today.
Wow. Here was another feedback we got. We titled it Aliens, Evolution, and the Occult. And actually the person asked you quite a few questions. But one of the things he pointed out is he said, after reading your book, what caught my attention in the first few pages of the book was the intriguing account you related how after Steven Spielberg's film, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, alien descriptions were modified to the extent that they were manifesting themselves, like those depicted in the movie, and yet prior to the film, they'd been described differently. So he's saying, after that movie, which you recorded, all of a sudden people's perceptions of what aliens look like was different, and then people started reporting that.
Yeah, what they look like based upon their experiences. That's the thing. And so a lot of people therefore think, well, it's the psychology, so they're interpreting it, whatever. But that's not the case. We look down through history and we can see that the actual visitations themselves, the appearance of those beings, has changed according to the culture of the day. And in fact, one of the world's leading UFO investigators, or ufologists, Dr. Jacques Vallée, showed that the accounts of fairies and elves and sylphs actually mirror, if you like, our modern alien abductions today. The same sorts of phenomena that were happening to people then are happening under the guise of alien abductions.
Oh, wow.
And the greys, etc., those typical little grey beings that we see in a lot of sci-fi movies today, really came about as an advent of Spielberg's Close Encounters. The same with UFO sightings. You might remember in the first segment we talked about how they've changed their shape. Well, they've done that over time. The most common description was a ball of light or something, but in fact the most common shape today is a triangle shape. Don't ask me why, but that's what it is.
So it seems like the big conclusion is these people have been having experiences throughout history, and this is just the same experience but repackaged, if you might want to call it, in a way that this culture will accept it, and they feel that it's, I guess, it's okay, it's reasonable.
Well, let me give you an example, Cal. If a person in the street had something describing itself as a fairy, stood them at the bottom of their bed, we'd laugh, because we've all been done away with those ideas. But they don't have a problem with the idea that a little grey entity stands there and says, I'm from the planet Zook and I'm here to help you. They'll believe that, basically.
Right. So, but 200 years ago, if you had a little alien say, I'm from the planet Zook, that wouldn't have meant anything. But if you were a fairy, then, so it's just the same old thing repackaged.
Yep.
Well, Gary, it's been great to have you on the show. I'm sure we'll have you back again. That's it for Creation Magazine Live. Tune in next week.